Hello and welcome to the John Bell and Croyden podcast with your host Alex Johnston. Pharmacy pioneers since 1798, John Bell and Croyden will boost your health and well-being by bringing you fresh, regular content and interviews with fascinating guests. Well, welcome to Series 2 of the John Bell and Croyden podcast. I'm Alex Johnston. I'm the General Manager at John Bell and Croyden. Today, I'm joined by Bandi Manzini, the Beauty Director for the Wedding Edition. You're also a freelance journalist, I believe, and you're one of the founders of Beauty Beat.
No, just the brand partnership director for the Beauty Beat.
Oh, forgive me, but I associate you so closely with it that I assume...
I might as well have been because I was there from the beginning, but just as a kind of...
You want to ask for the credits.
Yeah, true. But she's the founder and I'm just the person that's helped her.
You're never just, Bandi. You're never just. So, thank you for joining us. I'm glad to have you here and just to talk about, well, not just at all, but to talk about the Black beauty industry.
Yes.
Different types of skin, inclusion, diversity, all the things that are becoming more and more prevalent in the world of skincare. And I think we can all agree that we're not quite where we need to be in terms of the availability of products for different skin tones, different ethnicities. And I just really want to have a chat with you about your feelings about it, which I know are very passionate, and how we can encourage the world of skincare to maybe sit up, listen, and look at that audience as the significant spending factor that they actually are in this world.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely one of my favorite topics. And I think it's a topic that's not going away. And I think the industry is certainly waking up to a lot of facts, but is it at the pace that they need to be? That's the question, isn't it?
Well, as we were talking about previously, we've seen a massive explosion in the makeup world of Fenty Beauty, I suppose, started the whole thing where the number of shades available in foundation went from a huge range for Caucasian skin to maybe one or two for black skin. But now the range of shades is enormous. And we've seen other brands follow very quickly. And then a lot of the rise of these online makeup brands who are offering skin tone matching, Il Maquillage, that kind of thing. So that's obviously great for black women or black people who choose to wear makeup. But is skincare still lagging behind? I don't think we've seen the same explosion of products that are specifically engineered for black and Asian skin.
Absolutely, that's absolutely correct. I think what's happened in the color world of beauty has been very interesting, and that, as you say, the explosion of kind of foundation shade ranges and that being addressed. And I think, interestingly, I think with the with the sort of the color side of things, I still think there's work to be done, because what you find is when you're finding a foundation as a woman with a darker skin tone, undertone is everything. It actually matters.
What do you mean by undertone?
So there's obviously, you can see my complexion now. It's, I'm a black woman, but what you find is that there's nuance with black skin where we have undertones. So sometimes it's like a cooler undertone or a more yellow undertone or a more blue undertone.
Okay.
And that's hugely important in terms of choosing color. And shockingly, there are still a lot of foundations that don't actually address that issue. So although we've come a long way, that's still something that needs to be addressed as well, because if you've got the undertone wrong, then you end up with that ashy look or like a weird shade of brown, or it doesn't match your neck and all of that kind of stuff. So there's still a lot of work to be done there. However, we have come a long way in that space. With skincare, it's even more nuanced, because I think one of the barriers is, I think there's a lot of myths around black skin. You hear things like black don't crack, right?
Yes.
Which it sounds flattering because, oh, wow, it means our skin ages better. Yes, we have, thicker skin, as it were, but it still needs care and attention. You can't just leave it. And I think because there is that kind of black don't crack thing, there's a complacency there, I think, that kind of follows us when it comes to kind of catering to our skincare needs. But also there just isn't enough research to understand how our skin layers are different, and how our skin processes trauma, and how our skin processes sun, and how and how we need sun more, and what are the effects if we don't have the sun. There's so much research that hasn't been done around that, that needs to be done. That costs money.
Mm.
So maybe therein
Lies the issue.
lies the issue.
So the fundamentals of the differences between white skin and black skin really aren't being addressed at sort of the core,
No.
and I guess that's an odd place to be, because it's not as though we are a predominantly white world. Black skin makes up over 50% of the population. So why do you think that research just isn't being done? What's missing?
I think whilst there is a lot of us, we are still a minority group, even though there is, still a growing minority group, nonetheless. So I think, and also there's just a history of kind of chasing white pounds, white dollars. And I think, again, another misconception is about the spending power of Black consumers, especially Black women. And the irony is, we are the biggest spenders in
Yes,
beauty.
highly underestimated.
We are the biggest spenders in beauty. What we spend 6 times more on our hair versus our white counterparts. I mean, Sweeve ain't cheap. Um, we spend 6 times more on our hair. We spend so much more on makeup because it's harder to find the right thing for us. And so when we do find it, it's almost like cost doesn't matter, and we'll fork out because it's working for us. So and there's that loyalty. We're a return customer. If you look after us, we come back. So there's this kind of misunderstanding about the power of the black pound, especially in the UK. I think the US is further ahead in that kind of conversation, but in the UK certainly there's still I don't know, a dismissal of that consumer group. And when I think about, and this is obviously not based on any kind of research or stats, but if I look at my peer group of black women, most of them are six-figure earners. They're high achieving women with a huge amount of disposable income who are doing really well for themselves. And you just think, why aren't you talking to these women more?
It's a very good question.
Yeah.
And also in America, just to touch back on that point, they actually have a fully established African American beauty movement, don't they? It's
Yes.
not just this works for white skin and black skin. It's actually a full
Yes.
engaged movement of companies who are just providing product for
Yes.
men and women of color.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think America's way ahead in that, and they've even got events that are specifically, speaking to that audience. And yes, there's definitely much more of a galvanized kind of cohesive approach to things in a way that the UK, I think, is starting to get there. I think what you have in the UK is, it's Black History Month.
Oh,
We're going to do something to speak to black women, and then outside of that, it sort of just dies down. It's like, well, newsflash, I'm black 12 months of the year. It'd be nice if you cared about me in November too, kind of thing. So I think there tends to be that kind of almost sort of tokenistic, we're going to do something around Black History Month type thing. We might have a black brand ambassador, but you're not having that continuous conversation and engagement with kind of women of color. And that's not all brands. There are some brands who are doing really well, but there's still a lot of work to be done in terms of that ongoing conversation with the black consumer.
and the funny thing is that when you see, say in the glossy magazines, you see black women portrayed in fashion shoots or for beauty, the deep glow of their skin is a massive selling point for these fashion shoots.
Mhm.
And yet, from what we're talking about now, it's a gloss, because actually the products that woman needs probably aren't as good or as available. She's been made to look that way through obviously the magic of Vogue, but the fact is that to achieve that kind of skin glow, a lot of additional work and research that's gone in by a private individual to actually achieve that, because it's not readily available.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That is so true. And it's actually a lived experience of many black models and people that I know personally, where they'll turn up to a shoot or turn up to something and they're supposedly going to have a makeup artist there, and they turn up and this person just, I've had that experience where they just don't know what to do with your skin, and oftentimes you've got to bring your own kit.
Really?
Yeah, I've personally had that happen to me. It was shocking. I was asked to be in a content piece for a brand, but I won't name the brand. And they said, "Yeah, we'll do your makeup." And I turned up, and the makeup artist did not have my shade of anything. Of anything, I looked like an absolute clown. It was one of the most distressing things. And I just thought, was like 2022 or 2023. It's like in this day and age, you don't have the full shade range. But again, it's like even the makeup artists aren't trained to kind of think beyond a certain hue.
But as you say though, that's quite degrading and a bit humiliating if somebody's painting your face and they make you look less like yourself than yourself.
Yeah, I would have done a better job in the dark doing it myself. Honestly, it was so terrible, and it makes you. It just kind of reinforces that kind of notion of you're an afterthought,
Mm,
which I think is how a lot of black female consumers sometimes feel, is that we're an afterthought. It's like, oh, we're going to do all this thing. Oh no, yeah, here's 20 shades of foundation. Oh yeah, there's an extra 10
yeah.
for you guys, kind of thing. And I said it's moved on a little bit from that, but again, as you say, it's not just that kind of counter experience. As I said, it's that makeup artist experience, it's that turning up to the shoot experience, and you have to bring your own stylist, you have to bring your own products, which is much more prevalent than you might think.
And to touch on something my last guest, Billy Boulos from Life Jacket, Skin Protection touched upon, is that the issue we have is, and it's probably the same with makeup artists of dermatologists, is that they're trained on white skin, so they're not. Is it the fault of a makeup artist if they've done their training, they've worked for years and years, but they've never been exposed to enough black skin to understand what to do, how to really make that person shine? Is it because the industry is so attuned to white Caucasian that there's just not enough education out there?
Yeah, it's a very it's white centered even within the medical field. You know, as I was saying to you just earlier that the way that black skin shows reaction or allergy or trauma is very, very different. As I said, we bruise differently. If I bruise, unless you know what it looks like, you wouldn't think I've bruised. And that goes for doctors, which is really frightening,
Mm,
actually. And it actually speaks to a deeper thing as well, in the sense of, there's stats around how, when black women are, or when black people are in hospital, especially black women, you get sort of what you call, I guess, medical racism, where our pain is ignored because there's that perception of we're strong. Strong black woman trope is literally killing us in hospitals. I know I don't want to go into a really dark place, but it speaks to that same kind of continuum, really, where black women are 5 times more likely to die during childbirth in the
mm.
UK because our pain's ignored because we're strong black women, and so that's going to extend also to I might have an issue with my skin, that perception of, well, I can't see it, and also strong black women, it literally works against us, and in some instances it is killing us.
So it's almost a positive racism in that sense, that this strong black woman concept is actually taking away from your needs as a patient or a consumer.
Absolutely hate it. I utterly despise that label, and I distance myself from that because it is literally killing us, and it leads to an insensitivity to your pain,
Mm,
and to your needs, because you'll be fine, strong black woman, and it's not a compliment. I don't think it's actually dismissive of the fact that we are vulnerable and can be vulnerable and need care as much as everybody else.
of
So it's
course.
actually quite detrimental.
No, no, absolutely. And
Um,
I think that's something that, is unbelievable in this day and age, really. And something that I'm glad you're highlighting because it's obviously a very important thing. So, in terms of what you look for when you're looking at skincare, not to d- digress completely off into something else, but is what what is missing in your routine? Would you say on a day to day basis?
I think it's still a challenge to so most of the two sort of main things I'd say that women of color deal with when it comes to skincare concerns. I think I'd say hyperpigmentation is a real issue for us, and also our skin is also prone to producing excess sebum. It's very difficult to find products that adequately address that. Um, and those are the two main things. So if I have a spot, I have a panic because I know that's going to turn into a scar, that's going to hyperpigment, and it's never going away. So I think those two things are, and I think that's universal across most women of color is we don't worry so much about aging because our dermis is thicker, so we do kind of stand the test of time in terms of that kind of elasticity and the collagen, but it scars really badly. And it's really difficult to control that sebum production, which, as you know, you've got too much oil. You lead to a cycle of either over cleansing to get rid of it, or if you don't address it, then you end up getting spots. So it's a real challenge for us, and there's nowhere near enough research around that.
That's got to be for younger women as well quite stressful, because if if you're a teenager where teenage acne is obviously prevalent across all skin
Yeah.
types, and you're more conscious of the fact that if you do have a breakout, the likelihood of scarring is much higher than on white skin.
Yeah.
What was your go-to be when you were younger? Did you have a product that you knew you could use that would help? Were you trying to mix formulations from various
Oh
brands
god, it was all
together?
the wrong ones. It was all the wrong ones because also when I was growing up, showing my age now, there was no TikTok, believe it or not.
So there's no internet when I was growing up.
There was no internet. There was none of that. We didn't even have the sources of information, the resources that younger people have now. Because now you can actually go on Beauty Talk and there'll be information, education, and influencers play a big part of that. So I literally just used to bumble around Superdrug, buying the most awful products that just made my skin worse. Quite frankly, I mean, I just have like shudder at some of the things that I put on my skin that was just terrible. Things are much better now. Absolutely, I think you've just got much better products out there, and ironically, the the best two ranges that I've found really worked for my skin were actually French brands, and I think that makes sense because if you look at French skincare, it's cosmeceutical and it's steeped in that kind of pharmaceutical medical deep research. So it's efficacious by default. And I found that French skincare was kind of it's where I found my oh my god, this can actually work for me. So I still have that loyalty to kind of French skincare. I think it does a much better job than a lot of other.
No, as you say, French pharmacy, as we call all the French skincare we have in Jobbert and Croyden, is very much steeped in
Yes.
um, research that
Yes.
maybe not be big tech research, but this is done by people over years as apothecaries, and it's passed down, and they use a lot of natural products, of natural spring water, and it's a very safe, efficacious ranges, and that's good to hear in terms of it's still working for you now, I assume.
100%, 100%, and also it's affordable. Oftentimes you can walk into Boots or whatever, and not to mention the retailer here, but you can walk into like a
Boots,
Superdrug or
I don't know who they are, so that's fine.
obscure, you wouldn't have heard of them. And you can find that kind of, and those products were not around when I was younger.
They were here at John Bennett Croydon, but we're 226 years old, so I suppose
And also as a 16-year-old, I probably I would have been too intimidated to walk in here.
So you just touched on it, but let's talk about TikTok.
Yes.
So obviously, I'm a man in my 40s. I have no idea what TikTok is all about, but I know I hear positives and negatives from a skincare perspective about the information that is shared on TikTok. So from a black skin perspective, are you seeing it as a positive or as a negative? Are they sharing good advice or are they sharing bad advice?
It's everything. It's TikTok. And I think that's where you've got to be really smart about who you're following. So one of the I follow is an amazing influencer who I follow who her whole thing is about kind of skincare. But her background is that she's an esthetician. So she's certified in that. She did that as a career before. So therefore, you've got some level of credibility, and I'll probably listen to you. And she's also very honest. So she's not kind of on TikTok going, "This is amazing. This is amazing." It's like not everything can be amazing. Come on now. So she's very honest. She'll kind of go, "This is not for us, black girlies. Stay away because of." And then she goes into the science bit because she knows the science bit. She'll say to you, "This is why you
Sounds quite
need."
refreshing for social
Yeah,
media.
absolutely. So you've just got to be very discerning and not sort of take everything and check people's credentials. Because if someone is just an influencer, it's like, are they a skincare expert? Probably not. But if it's an esthetician who happens to have a TikTok platform, she might have a bit more credibility. So it's about kind of filtering through the noise and finding, the actual kind of expert voices. And also, I think brands, because brands have to be really careful what they put out there. It's you're better off following kind of a skincare specialist brand on TikTok than say a random for advice would be kind of my take.
And you think it's a good resource for black teens looking for skincare advice in terms of having somewhere to go, a place to start?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And as I said, I didn't have that. So it was literally just, oh, I might try that. Don't know. Does it work? Who knows? Whereas with TikTok, you get to see, you can find someone who looks just like you, has skin just like you, and therefore it's that kind of first person experience. And it's true to you and your needs.
Do you
So
think that makes black teenagers specifically more vulnerable to some of the overexposure to skincare that seems to be quite prolific at the moment on the social media platforms? It's something that, with our guests for this season of the podcast, I'm going to talk about a lot, because we are seeing younger people overexposing their skin to actives, to retinols, to alpha hydroxy acids, which is before they're even 18, 19, when their skin is still evolving, and they're doing damage that's unnecessary. For a black teen, if the range is not as available as to a white teen, are they going to be more vulnerable to being taken down that route if they fear scarring, if if they're worried about breakouts, if their sebum production is going wild? Do you think do parents need to be more mindful of what their kids are watching or what products they're allowing them to buy, especially from that perspective? Because we say with black skin, once you're scarred,
that's it.
it's very, very hard.
That's a really good point, and it's a double-edged sword, isn't it? It's like the internet is amazing, but it's also very evil.
Yes, there's no filter
you,
for
you
good and
know,
bad.
yeah, literally. So it's a double-edged sword, and I think that's just part and parcel of it. And I think there is a responsibility, and I think it falls squarely, really, on parents' shoulders. It's like you should be supervising what your child is putting on their skin, and where they're spending their money, and also what media they're consuming. You should keep an eye on that. So I think the responsibility lies there, and I think yes, absolutely, there is a vulnerability. In particular, as I said, to for kind of the younger black consumers, because of our specific needs, to perhaps go down a rabbit hole, or to get sucked
Yeah,
into something which may not necessarily be great for you. Um, but then equally, there are brands that speak to that adolescent audience and do it really, really well.
there are, absolutely.
And there are some influencers that do the same. So again, it's kind of that filtering, and it's difficult because there are variables you can't control, and a lot of it you've got to leave to chance. But I think it is down to kind of brands being responsible, parents, taking on that responsibility, because once you have those two things kind of in order, that's half the problem solved, I'd say. Um, but you sort of can't outsource, you know, what your child learns entirely to the internet.
It's very hard to teach your children that buyer
Mm,
beware.
mm,
I think kids see these things on YouTube,
mm,
TikTok,
yeah,
whatever, and they take it to be,
gospel.
yeah,
Yeah,
and as life should be. I mean, I know kids watch things on YouTube made by American teens. They're these fabricated. They're making money from the parents are making money from YouTube, but they seem to think that's
real
real
life.
life.
Yeah, so
You,
do I sometimes. To be fair.
I still think Postman Pat is real life, but if you transpose that into something you're actually applying to your skin, then you know it becomes a given that that is the right advice, and that's what frightens me. And one, children are oddly affluent these days and
They
they have
are.
money and they're happy to shop online. They're happy to go to the big beauty retailers, and they'll spend. But I mean, I've got nieces, and they they love brands. They love a lot of the entry level brands that have really good products at £6-7 a go. But I get messages from their mum often saying, "Is this okay? Is that okay?" But this is after the fact. They've ordered it, it's arrived, and they're looking at an alpha hydroxy, which I don't think an 11-year-old should be putting on their skin. And it's so difficult to police. But as you say, it does fall squarely on the shoulders of the parents. But also, does the industry have a responsibility to pick up on if people are promoting their brand for an 11-year-old, and again with packaging, if it is designed to appeal to a younger audience, is that the right place to be? And when we're talking about black teens, where then there's a level of vulnerability there because less caters to them, it seems to me it's a bit of a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think it's, it's interesting what you say about your nieces, buying these products, and there's a lot of information now, a lot of conversation around ingredients, which wasn't there certainly when I was
That's very true.
like, it just, I had no idea what, I mean, it could have been lead in there and I wouldn't have known.
But it blew my mind that salicylic acid is aspirin.
Well, exactly. I didn't know that till now. But there's so much information out there. But when you've got so much information, you also then have room for misinformation as well. And also, going back to the thing about testing on skin, there's always a wonder ingredient that pops up every now and then. If it's not niacinamide, it's vitamin A. If it's not vitamin A, it's vitamin C. If it's not vitamin C, it's salicylic.
Yeah,
There's always,
yeah, like a hot ingredient.
yeah, there's always a hot ingredient out there, and then people jump on that. But again, has that been tested on every single skin type? So if I'm jumping up and down and getting excited about niacinamide, how do I know if it's actually good for darker skin? I actually don't know the answer to that question.
Oh, there is one brand out there who tests. I think their route is 7 years from concept to shelf, where they
Mm,
test on every ethnicity.
mm,
And it's the only one. There may be others out there, and I can't speak to that because I don't know. But from working with that brand for many years, I know that SkinCeuticals do
yes,
actually do
they're
that.
amazing.
And yeah, so there is, but then obviously it's an expensive product because of the R&D that goes into bringing it to life. We know that the trickle down effect from that is going to be in all the L'Oreal products eventually.
Yes,
So it's all good science, but I think brands like SkinCeuticals, not to keep sort of using their name, but brands need to be more open about the research they're doing and to say, this is so you get that faith, you get that comfort that you're not just an afterthought, or if it worked for them, so it's probably going to work for
yeah,
you.
yeah, absolutely. I think that definitely there's a responsibility on the industry in that respect, and I think not just for teens, but for everybody. Like, I want to know, and I, I think vitamin and retinol, for example, I could be wrong, but I'm not sure retinol's necessarily the best or ideal for darker skin tones, for example.
It depends which retinol we're talking about, and it
So this
depends
is
on the application. Yeah, but
exactly,
I think with retinol, retinol is often used to help with hyperpigmentation, for cell renewal, scar removal, that kind of thing. So I think again, and it's often horses for courses, because retinol burn is a real thing. I have
exactly.
come to work having tested something with terrible retinol burn.
Yes,
So again, that's something that I feel the brands need to. They talk about buffered retinol. They talk about niacinamide being combined with retinol so it's much more soothing. But there does need to be more education, or just more information coming from the brands as to the research that's gone into that and who can be using what. I believe, from a, not to go crazy about protecting retinol, but it is a wonder ingredient. I think used correctly. I probably have a dermatologist telling me otherwise. I have one actually on Friday. I'll ask him. But I believe if used correctly, because their main function is increased cell renewal. So your skin is renewing itself faster, which obviously then improves your texture and encourages collagen production. So that's a good one. I'm going to bring that up with the dermatologist I'm speaking to later this week.
yeah, but that's really interesting because you've talked about the different types of retinols. How many people know that there's different ones and that they require different application, and that actually, like you talk about retinol burn, are there certain skin tones that are more prone to it? All of that information is mostly lacking, I think, actually.
No, I think you're right. And so, if you could give three top skincare tips to say, let's go with a teenager, a teenage bandy. What would you have liked to have learned that you know now you didn't know then?
I think one of the things that I would have done is you've got to ride it out to an extent.
That's so true.
You've got to ride it out to an extent, because if you think about, your hormones are in such flux when you're a teenager. It's ridiculous, and it's like, ride it out to an extent. Give it, it'll sort itself out in some way somehow. So I think there's an element of be patient, and I think the second thing would be, there's lots of information that you can get for free now about skincare. So if there is a skincare concern, which teenagers do have, speak to a dermatologist in the first instance. That's who you should go to first. Um, and actually, there's dermatologists that you can go into their office, but there's also, fully licensed, accredited dermatologists online that you can follow and inbox, and they'll sort of come back to you. So I think that would be the second thing. And then the third thing is don't cover it with makeup. Because that's just going to aggravate your skin even more. I mean, I did that. You kind of think, well, I've got lots of spots or whatever. I'm just going to whack a load of makeup on it, and it's just clogging up your pores, distressing your skin even more, and just making the problem worse. So those would be the three things I'd say to teenage Bandy.
And I think as well with when it comes to people overusing makeup to hide blemishes, like we can still see,
Yeah,
unless you're a
yeah.
makeup artist,
It
it's
actually
just not
makes
worth
it
it.
makes the spots look more prominent. It's yeah.
Well, I was told by a dermatologist not too long ago that the three things I was asking about my nieces again, the three things to tell a teenager is keep it clean, keep it dry, keep it moisturized, and everything else, as you say, will
Yeah.
probably figure itself out as your hormones figure themselves
Yeah.
out. And your skin doesn't stop really evolving until you're about 18 years old,
Mm,
which is older than
mm.
I would have thought. And as we know now, and I'm in my 40s, and I still get breakouts. I mean, I am testing a lot of skincare a lot of the time,
Yeah.
but I still get breakouts. I also have dry days. Sometimes I think, oh, my skin's looking good today. The next day it looks like I've been dragged through a bush backwards. It's there's no.
Yes.
It's the barometer for your wellness.
Yes.
It's the barometer
Yes.
for your physical and your
Yes,
mental
it
wellness.
is.
It's a really important thing that we look at our skin and we understand it. And I think, as you said earlier, which I thought was very poignant, is the ability now for all of us, no matter who we are, where we come from, our ethnicity, our skin color, we can find someone who looks like us to tell us their experience, and we can feel comforted that we're never alone. We There's somebody out there who's gone through the same thing, and they can share this. There's
Yes.
also the oversharers that maybe
Yeah.
aren't
Yeah.
quite as appropriate as we might hope for, but
Yeah.
the information is there,
Yes, it is.
which brings me smoothly to Beauty Beat. So the only, I believe, large-scale Black beauty event being held
Luxury
in
beauty.
luxury. Forgive me, always luxury. One of my favorite
Always
words.
luxury. Yes.
And being held this year on its biggest scale ever, I believe.
Yes. Yes.
Tell us all about
Quivers. Ah.
it.
So yes, so we're going into year 3, which is unbelievable. It was only 3 years ago that was sat round a table with Donna, coming up with the name, trying to ideate this thing and think, how is it going to work? How is it going to come to life? And 3 years later, we've got an event coming up in November. The growth has been incredible, beyond kind of wildest dreams. That first year we had 700, we sold 700 tickets, which was like, wow, that's amazing. And that first year was about proof of concept and showing that we could deliver rather than kind of doing a big thing. And we did that really well. And sort of testament to the success of that was the second year where we doubled capacity to 1,500. But the real story for year 2 was 1,400 people on a waiting list trying to get tickets. I mean,
Incredible.
it's bittersweet because you're sort of like, damn it, I'd love to have these people at this event, but I physically can't fit them in. But wow, that there's such an appetite for this event. So the people have spoken. So scaling up for year 3, going to a much bigger venue. We're going to go up to 2,500 thousand ticket sales. I imagine we'll still have people on a waiting list just based on the fact that we had 3,000 interested people last year. So it's shaping up to be even bigger and better. We've got incredible brand partners, John Penn and Croyden,
Oh,
um,
who knew?
case in point, um, who will be, for the first time since we launched the Beauty Beat, who will be kind of um, owning kind of that wellness conversation and that wellness piece, which is again so hugely important. Because when you talk about Black beauty, it's like we all know about the conversations about hair. We all know the conversations about color, makeup. Skincare's and much more of an emerging conversation, but wellness is so key, because again, wellness needs are slightly different, for women of color. Our health concerns are different. The things that are a threat to our well-being, are different. And so, what we want to do with the Beauty Beat this year is really dive deep into kind of various areas of wellness, and we know that that's going to resonate, because our talks are always oversubscribed. We've not talked about this, but we know that there's definite appetite to delve into that.
I watched it's a bit of an aside, but there was a program on Channel 4 called Double Your Money. And basically, you were given £500. You had a week to come back with £1,000. But there was a mother and daughter, a Black mother and daughter, and they held a wellness seminar as one of their Double the Money things. And again, hugely oversubscribed because obviously there isn't much, and they were arranging this. Obviously, they had a network. I mean, she was a model, but they only had like 2 weeks to do this, and the fact that they could pull that out the bag so quickly just speaks to the demand out there for people wanting this information to come again from people who look like them.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's the key thing, because if it's someone who looks like you, chances are there's a lot of shared experiences. There's also going to be just at a basic level, just genetic similarities, just by
Well, yeah.
virtue of the fact that you're both women of color. So yeah, having those connections is really important, but also a safe space in which to do it. Because as I said, the kind of the wellness slash health experience of a black women can often be dismissed because we're strong and sassy, so but we need safe spaces.
Of
We need
course.
safe spaces where we can talk about things that worry us, that bother us, individually, as a community, amongst our sister friends, as I like to call them. And so the Beauty Beat is that, it is that safe space where we're in this space where you've got, women that look like you, women next to you, talking to you, sharing with you, advising you, because they've had a similar lived experience, or if not, there's a level of empathy there that they have by virtue of that kind of commonality that you have.
Yeah, a shared experience in being disappointed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, let's hope that we are moving towards change, and congratulations on year 3 of Beauty Beat. We're
Thank you.
very excited to be involved with
We're
you,
excited to have you on board. I think it's going to be phenomenal.
and that's November
2nd and 3rd
2nd and 3rd. So, and tickets will be on sale.
in the next couple of weeks.
Ooh, very cool. Thank
So
you,
from
Bandi, so
August we
much.
start pumping out the tickets, but
Amazing.
lots of promo on the social at the minute for the event.
Cool. Well, we'll make sure everybody looks out for it.
Absolutely.
Thank you for coming in, and thank you for
pleasure.
chatting with me. It's always lovely to see you.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, always, and we'll see you again very soon.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Bandi.
Thanks.
Take care. Thanks for listening to the John Bell and Croyden podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, review, and give us that 5-star rating from wherever you get your podcasts.